Double kill. Triple kill. Double kill. Triple kill. Overkill. Kill-tacular. Perfection.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for being here, and let's just go ahead and get right into it. So this is a Melee Zer0 guide, but this is going to be a little bit different than most Melee Zer0 guides, because most of them focus on using Gibbed to create a perfect Hide of Terramorphous and an Evisceration Grog Nozzle, but I'm going to show you guys that you don't even need that. You know, even a lot of veteran players think that you need that stuff for Melee Zer0 to be effective, but you don't. You can use a legitimate Love Thumper and a Rubi, and even on OP10, you can make Melee Zer0 really strong. So you can see this is a legitimate Love Thumper, meaning not a perfect one. A perfect Love Thumper deals over 5 million roid damage. A perfect Hide of Terramorphous deals over 7 million. This is a decent one, but obviously there's a lot of room for improvement. It only has one Mallow on part, a perfect one will have all Mallow on parts. But even at 3.8 million roid damage, you'll see we're still fully capable of taking out strong enemies and chaining Many Must Fall multiple times. You saw some of that already in the intro. But yeah, let's just go ahead and start from the beginning with the gear. Obviously the Rapier is the moneymaker. This is the highest damage melee weapon in the game. It will give you plus 200% melee damage, although you will take increased melee damage while holding it, but that's barely even noticeable as a problem. The Rubi. The reason I use the Rubi is I just don't like the Grog Nozzle. I don't like how people say it's required, so I just tend to not use it. I was actually lucky enough to get a perfect Rubi on my first try. You really don't need a perfect one. You really just need it to be slag and to have that blade. If you can also get the Mallow on grip, that's, you know, good too, but far from necessary. Oh, a quick note about the Rapier. The parts don't matter, but if you want to stack Rising Shot with this weapon, you're going to need a fire rate of 8.7 or lower to maintain that. So just keep that in mind. I'll talk about that more during the skills. But yeah, if you want to use Rising Shot with this weapon, you need the fire rate 8.7 or lower, because even the melee stacks are determined by the weapon's fire rate. Rubi, you want this to keep your health up, because Melee Zer0 relies on health gating to survive, especially on OP10. So whenever our Deception is down and our shield is down, we will just be swinging melee attacks to keep our health up. The Pimpernel. This is how we're going to make this build work without Gibbed or the community patch or badass rank or anything like that. The Pimpernel is such a great weapon because, for one, it's a great slag tool, and it's just a great damage dealer. It just works in so many situations. So you will want a full set of elemental Pimpernels. Now, I did actually reset the playthrough to get these. It's not too bad if you know you're going to have to do it beforehand, because you just have to play through the first part of the Captain Scarlet DLC. Now, if you're doing that, make sure to get a Sandhawk and a Jolly Roger each time in that DLC as well before you reset. And if you're on console, you can get multiple quest rewards by signing in a second character, and then just turn in the quest with your first character, and then trade the item to your second character, then dashboard with your first character such that you don't save the game, and now just save and exit with your second character. And the result will be that the second character will keep the item, but the first character will not have completed the quest when you log back in. If you're on PC, I don't think you have access to like local split screen like that, but you can use outside programs to do split screen, or you can use, you know, you can just have a friend sign in and join your game, or you can just use read-only farming, or you can use the community patch. If you're on PC, you have a lot of options. But I wanted to make this build in such a way that the average console player could replicate it. So yeah, you'll need to get that full set of elemental Pimpernels. Even if you're a console player, you can do that without having to reset the playthrough. Although I did, just because I wanted to get all of this gear completely legitimately. And I was actually lucky enough to get a perfect slag Pimpernel here, which some people would say that the magazine accessory would be the better version. But you know, this works just fine, especially for Zer0, because he can increase the mag size on his own. And the Pimpernel is such a powerhouse that even the slag version can just outright kill enemies sometimes. And then your final weapon slot is just going to be your other elemental Pimpernel matching the primary weakness of the enemies. So if you're, fighting flesh enemies, you'll want to fire. If you're fighting robots, you'll want a corrosive, whatever. And then the Love Thumper, baby. It may not have the raw power that the Hide of Terramorphous has, but it is still a powerhouse. It's difficult to say whether the Love Thumper playstyle or the Hide of Terramorphous playstyle is harder. They're both very difficult, just in different ways. This is arguably, and in my opinion, the highest skill ceiling playstyle in the game. It's going to take some practice to get good at it, but once you do, it's a complete powerhouse. Now, the reason the Hide of Terramorphous is kind of hard to use is because you have to manage stripping your shield. Now, once you get good at it, it's not a problem, but it does take practice. Now, with the Love Thumper, no, you don't have to strip your shield, but your shield is always down, so you have less survivability. So you'll have to adjust to that, but, you know, we'll be using a Chain Lightning, so we'll be able to keep our health up that way. And you'll see, I'll try to coach you through the gameplay. I'm going to show a lot of gameplay and just describe how I play so you guys can get an accurate idea of how to play this. And then, yeah, like I said, Chain Lightning. The good news is, since we're not stripping our shield, we can use an OP10 Chain Lightning. If you're playing with the if you're playing with the Hide of Terramorphous, you have to use, I believe, an OP10 Hide of Terra with an OP7 Chain Lightning with an OP3 Shock Bone. But for us, we can just rock the OP10 Chain Lightning, and that'll help us get our health back. Another consideration is that the Love Thumper deals an explosive Nova, so that will help make up the difference in the healing between the Ruby and the Grog. Because obviously the Grog has the most healing, but, you know, the Ruby is pretty good. But, you know, the OP10 Chain Lightning and the Explosive Nova will also help get our health back up. Again, this was more focused on how to help the average console player do a Melee Zer0 build. And if you're a console player, you're probably not going to have a bladed Grog. You could get one back in the day during the loot hunt, but the only way to get one now is to use Gibbed or to use the community patch. Or you have to leave the Grog Nozzle quest active in your quest log. The beard makes the wizard, or whatever that's called. The beard makes the man. And then you have to save quit every single time until you get a blade on it. So I just run the Ruby again because I just don't really care for the Grog and it's just not needed. Now, something you can do is keep the Grog Nozzle in your backpack, and if you happen to spawn with the blade, you can just switch to it. Or you can do, you know, a few save quits, and if you get tired of trying for it, you can just switch to the Ruby. Or you can just be like me and just use the Ruby completely. I use it extensively, I even use it on Digistuct Peak, and it's just fine. But anyway, on to the class mod. The Legendary Ninja, it's just the best class mod for Melee Zer0. It'll give us really good skill bonus boosts, and then the melee damage will be nice too. And then you are going to want a full set of Bone of the Ancients, just to match whatever your primary element damage is. And then the cooldown rate is so good because it'll help us get our Deception back more quickly, and it'll, you know, help us get more Mini Must Fall chains, more Death Blossoms. So it's just the best. Even, like, I think the Bone of the Ancients is the best item in the entire game. You know, I talk about that a lot. You may be tempted to use a melee damage relic, but in my opinion, they just don't do enough. I think the math works out weirdly in the formula, so it doesn't even give you that big of a damage bonus. But just getting your cooldown rate back more quickly and getting that extra damage is so good. Because this is kind of a hybrid build. We can play at both long range and close range, so this will benefit both of those playstyles. And during my first gameplay section, I show the more long range capabilities. Then during the second gameplay section, I show more the close range, and then I do kind of a mix of both after that. Now, you can also hold on to a Singularity Grenade to bunch up enemies and try to bore them. You can hold on to a Slag Transfusion Grenade if you want to try to use that to slag and get your health back. You can also hold on to a Magic Missile. This will help you slag during Deception, but overall the Chain Lightning is going to be your primary grenade. Now you can also get a Sniper Heart of the Ancients, because if you end up in a situation where you're getting downed over and over, then your fight for your lifetimer will just bleed out almost immediately. Like I said, if you're going to enter into that situation, if you're just getting downed a lot, you can just throw on this Heart of the Ancients, and that will help you out. And then the sniper damage will benefit your Pimpernels, and that'll give you some extra time to work with and put you above health gate when you get back up. And you can also use some other weapon types, you know, good launchers, Topneaas, Norfleets, interfacers, the Unkempt Harold. I don't use the Interfacer or the Norfleet during any of this gameplay because those are really hard to get, and like I said, I wanted this to be accessible, but those are other options you have. Topneaas are pretty easy to get, the Herald's easy to get, so those are good options too, because for some enemies the Pimpernels are kind of hard to use on. So in situations like that, yeah, I would recommend just using a Harold or a Topneaa. We'll go ahead and look at the skills. Starting with Deception, this is just so good. You can see we get melee damage up to 650%. And the way that works is the melee damage steadily increases while you're in Deception. So you don't get that full 650% bonus damage until the final 0.5 seconds. Now, you don't typically need it, but for bosses and badass enemies, you definitely want to wait till the full duration. The gun damage is nice too. Unfortunately, the critical damage doesn't really apply because that damage calculation happens when the shot lands, and obviously as soon as you shoot, Deception ends. So you're usually not going to get the crit modifier there. But, you know, the gun damage is still nice, and especially the melee damage. And also just for survivability, Zer0 is a glass cannon, so he is squishy, so being able to get his Deception back more quickly is going to be really nice for survivability. And then, you know, you'll get ambush every single time, you'll get your death blossoms each time, many must fall, you'll be able to get your executes back, so getting your action skill back more quickly is just such a massive bonus. And then starting with the bloodshed tree, 5 points in Killing Blow. This will basically delete 30% of every enemy's health bar. Once you get them down here, it's basically over, and the sound is just super satisfying. Now, you obviously don't want Grim because that is going to regen your shield, and since we are relying on health gating to survive, we do not want to increase our health with Iron Hand, so we'll go ahead and take Be Like Water. It's not super good, but it's decent. When you apply a melee death mark, this will actually stack. So normally you get 80% damage bonus. Well, when you apply Death Mark with a melee attack, and I say that because it does not count with Kunai, unfortunately. But when you do it with a melee attack, you will get 100% bonus damage on your first gun damage attack. Not for the full duration, just on the first attack. And then you do still shoot a lot, even though it's more of a melee playstyle, so you will be getting that melee damage bonus pretty frequently. And then follow through, this is just incredible. We'll get great movement speed and damage bonuses. Zer0 does not want to stay still, especially not on OP10, so this damage bonus and this movement speed bonus will be really good. It'll help us close distance, which is really good for Melee Zer0. You need to be moving around a lot and flanking behind enemies because of backstab. This is a massive damage bonus, and it's our only melee damage bonus that we can consistently get. What I mean by that is, Killing Blow relies on being below or being at 30% or lower health. Execute can only be done in Deception. Follow through is a kill skill. So backstab is like our only consistent massive melee damage bonus that we can get. So you always want to be hitting them from behind. And then execute. This will double your melee damage in Deception. It's also great for just closing distance, so I always take it regardless of what build I'm doing. Then at this point, I would recommend putting at least 1 point into Resurgence just to activate the class mod. And then you'll have to decide, would you rather have a little bit of bonus damage from Like the Wind, or a little bit of extra healing from Resurgence? And it's really just going to depend on personal preference. The thing is, when you're chaining Many Must Fall, you're using the Rapier, and so you're not getting access to that healing. So you could go ahead and just put the points in here to get more healing from the Rapier, or like I said, you could put those 3 points into Like the Wind to get a little bit bonus damage. Just try them both out and see which one you prefer using. And then Many Must Fall. This is such a fun skill, such a great skill. Every single time we kill an enemy with a melee attack in Deception, we will immediately get a second Deception, and that is without end. There is no limit to how many times you can do this. And each time, you know, you'll get your Death Blossoms again, your Kunai again, so it's just so good. And you'll see, even with the Love Thumper, even with it being imperfect, even playing on OP10, even not using Badass rank, we are still capable of chaining it multiple times. And then over here in Cunning, I go ahead and take Fast Hands because we are still reloading and swapping a lot, and those are just such great bonuses. Then I go ahead and take Ambush. This is a big damage bonus. It is multiplicative, and this will always apply when we're coming out of Deception, so it's just so good for that. And then I would actually recommend taking Fearless, because since we are using the Love Thumper, our shield is always going to be down, so our weapons are going to really benefit from those bonuses, especially our Pimpernels here. There is a problem. We could make use of basically every skill here, and we just don't have enough skill points. So you are going to have to give some stuff up. Obviously, you don't want to skip Death Mark. This is going to give you massive damage bonuses. And then from here, you could pick a lot of different things. I would primarily, first off, I would go for Rising Shot to move down the skill tree, because not only will our melee attacks benefit from it, our Pimpernels will too. And the Pimpernel is really good with Rising Shot because it has multiple pellets. So you can shoot once and then immediately get the full bonus. And then again, we will also benefit our melee damage from it. And like I said before, with the Rapier, you want a fire rate of 8.7 or lower. And that is because with Rising Shot, even the melee stacks are determined by the fire rate of the weapon you're holding. So if the fire rate is higher than 8.7, it's going to be very hard to maintain them. Now, it's not a huge deal, because usually when you're in those situations where you're meleeing over and over again, you're going to be using your Moxie weapon, but there will be occasions where you're doing it with the Rapier. So if you can get that fire rate of 8.7 or lower, that's ideal, but obviously not required. And then we'll go ahead and put our final point in here, and then I would recommend putting 4 points into Innervate to move down the skill tree. This will give us some bonus movement speed and deception, which will be really nice. The health and the gun damage bonuses are kind of small, but there's something. The thing is, Counter-Strike would be good too, but it's just very situational. You're really only going to get the benefit whenever you're exchanging melee attacks with like a boss or a badass enemy. And it is good, it's just I would rather have Innervate for its bonuses. And then you can make an argument for Two Fang too, but we just don't have enough points to get everything we want, and I would rather have Innervate compared to these two skills. Now, Unforeseen is actually pretty good. It can kill enemies, and it will also heal you if you're holding your Moxie weapon. I think 1 point with the Grog will heal you to full. I think it takes 2 to 3 to heal to full with the Rubi. But it's kind of annoying because sometimes it'll kill an enemy that you wanted to chain Many Must Fall on, so overall I don't recommend it for this build. And then Death Blossom, this is super good. Every single time we go into Deception, we can death mark up to 5 enemies, or we can throw the whole wad on a single enemy, and hopefully they'll get slagged. Not always though. Again, every single time Many Must Fall activates, we'll get access to new kunai. It's just so good for applying not only death mark, it's so good for healing you, because when you're holding your Moxie weapon, you can throw them and get your health back. They will also benefit from Roid damage bonuses, so keep that in mind. Sometimes you can accidentally kill an enemy that you wanted to chain off of, so be aware of that. And finally, be aware that you can kill yourself with your own kunai. So when you throw them, you need to delay your execute, or you'll just run into your own kunai. And you'll get the timing for it as you practice more. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the Stopping Tree. Headshot will not benefit the melee attacks as they deal a flat double damage on crit spots, but it'll be good for the Pimpernels. Killer, this is a really good kill skill. Obviously, you don't want to skip Boar. It's such a good skill. For a single point, you can insta-kill, multiple raid bosses, Hyperius, Vermivorous, you can kill Bunker, you can kill the Binary boss. On top of all that, it highlights crit spots, and it stops your bullets from being deflected. All that for 1 point is just insane. And now we want to move down the skill tree to get to @1 with the gun for the Pimpernels, and so I would go ahead and take 1 shot, 1 kill. And then you'll need to take either Kill Confirmed or Precision to move down this tree. I would just do Kill Confirmed. I would rather have a little bit damage bonus compared to an accuracy bonus. Just whatever you do, don't take Velocity, because that's going to hurt the Pimpernels. This is a good skill, it's just unfortunately not good with the Pimpernel. And then we have 3 points left for @1 with the gun. The reason I want to get here is because we're using both of these weapons, both of these Pimpernels, and they will really benefit from the hip shot accuracy, the reload speed, and the mag size bonuses. They're really good for getting second wins, but sometimes the recoil can be hard to deal with when you're in fight for your life. But getting that hip shot accuracy will make it really easy to get second wins with them. So that's why I really wanted to get this skill. Unfortunately, we can only get 3 points in it and still get both of these capstones. But I've played this build a lot. This is my favorite build, and I have found this to be the best setup. Now, if you wanted to, if you felt like you didn't need these points in @1 with the gun, you could take these out, take out Kill Confirmed, take out 1 shot, 1 kill, and then you could finish out some skills over here. You could finish out Innervate, Two Fang, and Counter-Strike, and those would be good bonuses. But like I said, I've just found more success using this skill setup. But that is the skills and the gear explained, and I will go ahead and go on over to the gameplay section, and I'll try to kind of coach you guys through what I'm doing to try to help you understand how to play this build. And just real quick, before the gameplay section, I figured I would show you guys what I would do on the community patch. Although I don't play with it, I know a lot of people like to, and it changes things up a bit, so I'll just go ahead and show how I would fill out my skill trees on it. The main thing is it swaps Fearless and Grim, so that's a little bit better. But I would just take Killing Blow, and now you can just take Fearless because again it has been swapped with Grim. And also the community patch changes Fearless so that it gives you fire rate and health regeneration. If you don't like that, you can disable that because the community patch is very modular. You can choose to enable or disable any or all parts of it. And I would probably rather have the gun damage back on it, so I would do that. And then we'll just take Backstab, Follow Through, and Execute. Again, I would put at least 1 point into Resurgence to activate the class mod. And then just pick whichever skills you would rather the most have. You could put the remaining skill points into Resurgence for more healing. You could put them into Lack the Wind if you want the ability to dodge those bullets and status effects, because that's the changed effect of Lack the Wind. If you'd rather have Be Like Water, you can do that. I would probably just go ahead and put the points in here. Status effects are very dangerous, so being able to dodge them is going to be pretty good. You could actually, you know what? I would probably put them into Iron Hand. So let me reset those. I say that because on the community patch, you can see instead of increasing our health, it actually gives us health damage reduction. So I would take Killing Blow, Fearless, Follow Through, Execute, Backstab. I put 1 point into Resurgence, and then I'd put the remaining points into Iron Hand. Because then we'll get a small melee damage bonus, and we'll get health damage reduction. So that'll be good because it won't actually make it harder for us to get back above health gate. Then I'd go ahead and take Many Must Fall, Fast Hands, Ambush. Obviously don't take Grim. Then I do Rising Shot, Death Mark, Innervate, and now you can choose between Counter Strike and Two Fang. You can make an argument for both. If you'd rather have that periodic melee damage bonus, you can take it. If you'd rather have the more consistent double shot chance for your Pimpernels, you can take Two Fang. Just do whichever one you would rather have. I'll probably just go ahead and take Two Fang. And then this tree is going to be the same, because again, I do want to get down to at 1 with the gun for the Pimpernels. So yeah, that is the setup I would use on the community patch. And also keep in mind, on the patch, the explosive damage from the Love Thumper will not actually hurt your teammates. In the base game it will, but in the community patch that is disabled. And now we will go ahead and go on to the gameplay section. Alright, so here we are with the gameplay section, and like I said, I'm going to run through the Rustyards here, and during this section, I'm going to be trying to mostly showcase the longer range capabilities of this build. Because again, we do have those Pimpernels, and here I'm taking out the barrels. Barrels are very dangerous, you want to be really careful of them. But you can see the Pimpernels, obviously everyone knows the Pimpernel is one of the best weapons in the game. And it is a very important part of this build. And you can see we're one-shotting these guys with the Slag Pimpernel, when I can hit my shots right anyway. And now again, I will occasionally use melee during these sections, but it is going to be mostly focused on the Pimpernels. So you can see when this guy gets closer, I just go ahead and take him out with melee. And it's very capable at doing so. It's able to get some long-range death marks off there. And I'm also trying to be mindful of cover. You can see I'm trying to use that wall to protect myself a bit while I take these guys out. So yeah, another one-shot kill with the Slag Pimpernel. And you can just kind of do that. You can kind of take out guys at long range and then wait for other enemies to close distance on you. Typically, well, I'll talk more about that during the during other sections, but one way you can play this build is to do that, to just take out the guys who are standing far away from you with the Pimpernels, and then once the enemies have close distance on you, take them out with the melee part. There I had that guy death mark, so I was able to see him through his invisibility. And you can see we have these Anchormen here, badass enemies, and we're able to take them out with ease. You do want to be going for those backstabs. You know, ideally you want to have enemies slagged, death marked, and you want to be backstabbing them for the greatest chance to chain Many Must Fall the most amount of times. For a lot of enemies, especially non-badass and non-boss enemies, you can get away with just death mark and backstabbing them. So he was able to take that guy out. And then I was really surprised that that guy didn't get one shot. But, you know, we'll finish him off with the Ruby, one shot that guy with the Pimpernel. And see, I got my health down there, so I'll just go ahead and move in and get my health back with my kunai. Could have also used the Chain Lightning there. And then again, this is what I mean. When you get caught out in the middle of the battlefield and you don't have deception, you're just going to have to swing with your moxie weapon to keep your health up, and it can still do pretty good damage. See, backstab that guy. Was in kind of an awkward position with that guy, so I did have to take him out with the Rubi, but that's not a problem. And then I just finished up this final section right here, and see right here I got my health. I was below health gate, so I switched to the Rubi and the Chain Lightning to get back above health gate. And for those of you who might not know what health gating is, just in this game, you can never be killed if you're above half health. There are like a very small number of exceptions to that, such as like self-damage or turrets. But for the vast majority of cases, you can never die if you are above 50% health. And whenever you get knocked below 50% health, you gain, I believe it's 1.2 seconds of invincibility. And that's just enough time to react and to get your health back up with something like the Chain Lightning and the Rubi. And so you can see, just taking these guys out, and then there's one more badass enemy that spawns here, and we'll take him out before moving on to the next section. So you see, we'll get Slag and Kunai on him, and that took him out a lot. Yeah, because Kunai, again, will benefit from Roid damage bonuses. So, like I said, you gotta be careful not to run into your own Kunai, and you gotta be careful to not kill the targets that you want to chain with Kunai. So you can see I'm moving quickly with follow through and execute, so that I can get behind these enemies to backstab them, and that was a 4-stack right there. This section right here can be a good place to get a lot of chains into. Sometimes that guy can blow the skeletons up, but if not, you know, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And skeletons do take increased melee damage, so melee builds are really good in the Tiny Tina DLC. I did have, on my very first channel, I had a very long video where I showcased several different builds for Zer0 and Axton for dealing with the enemies in this DLC. Because a lot of people do really like this DLC, but they find the enemies kind of hard to deal with. But there are a lot of ways to do so. So you can see I just downed myself with the Chain Lightning. Sometimes if you throw the Chain Lightning at too shallow of an angle, it can kill you. So you always want to make sure you throw it downward at an angle. But also sometimes it will still link back to you. Sometimes it'll hit the ground, hit an enemy, and then hit you, and it'll down you. It doesn't happen that often. I think you'll see in the whole video it only happens like twice. So as long as you're not throwing it like too close to yourself, you'll be fine for the most part. Maybe like 1 in 25 or even fewer throws will chain back to you. Maybe like 1 in 50. But yeah, these guys, they do take increased melee damage, and I may remake that video eventually and show some of the different ways of dealing with these guys. And see right there, my melee attack didn't register. Some enemies, they'll have shields, or sometimes your hit just seems to not register, and in that case, you'll obviously have to take them out with another melee attack. That can usually be avoided by aiming at their feet, I've noticed. Like a lot of these skeletons have shields and stuff, so you can usually bypass them by aiming at their feet, like I said. And these rock golems, melee works pretty well on them too, but if not, then you can just use, you know, a Herald or something. See, I almost took him out in one hit there. The Herald is good for them. The Pimpernel kind of struggles with these enemies. Grab that guy's sword. And then right here, I think I ended up downing myself with the Chain Lightning again. But I think those are the only 2 times in the entire video that it happens. But, you know, we are fully capable of getting back up from Fight for Your Life. So you can see some of those melee attacks weren't quite registering, so I started aiming at his feet to take him out. And I guess it's because of the shape of these enemies. The Pimpernel kind of struggles, I guess, because they're skinnier enemy types. But, you know, right here, like I said, for enemies like this, you don't have to slag them. Just getting Deathmark and Backstab on them will allow you to take them out. So you see that was 4, and that was 5 Many Must Fall chains. And then I found a Tubby Bones. You can also use a Fastball a little bit. I should have mentioned that before. You can throw it to get your health back. It's not something I use a lot, but, you know, it's another option you have. Because if you throw it while holding a Moxie weapon, you'll basically always be healed to full. And then again, the Topneaa, the shock Topneaa is another good option. Shock damage is the best damage type for these guys because they take neutral damage to it. And then I figured I'd run back through this section one more time. You can see I'm able to get several chains here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's the second 5 stack. And then again, this build deals with badass enemies very well. Just get slag on him, get kunai on him, and then backstab, and you can take out really tough enemies in a single hit. You can also use the bee shield with this build. You know, the bee is very effective, obviously, and it's very good with multi-projectile weapons such as the Pimpernel. So if you're dealing with like the Big Bertha who's hard to melee, you can just throw on the bee shield to quickly deal with them. That's just what I did here. I don't, you know, typically make a lot of use of the bee shield, but it is another option. Then once we blow it up, obviously Bewm will come out, and then we can just finish him off very quickly. And then I figured I would cover the run up to Captain Flynt, because it's kind of tough, and Captain Flynt is a pretty tough enemy, so I'll go ahead and show that. I did also plan on doing Southpaw Steam and Power, and I did actually record it. That's why you saw part of the footage in the intro. But I'm going to go ahead and cut that out because I think it's going to be a little redundant to also show that. I mean, this is plenty of footage, and I don't want the video to go on too long and for people to get bored and click off and stuff. And like I said, I just feel like it would be a little redundant. So I will go ahead and finish the run up to Captain Flynt, and then it'll be on to Digistuct Peak. And like I said, barrels are really dangerous on OP10. The explosive Nova of the Love Thumper can set them off. So see right there, I think I just died to a barrel. But again, just stay calm and you'll be able to get your second wins. The Pimpernels are very good for that, especially being boosted by @1 with the gun. But you can see, I'm chaining Many Must Fall, I'm killing enemies with the Pimpernels, I'm just making use of both sides of the build here. And Ironclad Lunatics, they do actually take, they are weak to fire damage if you can crit them. But in a situation like this, I was just waiting for him to break my shield so I could get my Roid damage bonuses, and then you see we easily take him out. That's another way you can play this. Instead of, you know, you don't really have to worry about stripping your shield. If your shield is up, like you just got up from a second wind or something, what I like to do is just take enemies out, again, at long range, and then let them naturally deplete the shield, and then once they deplete the shield, then I can move in. But, you know, while it's up, I'll just pick them off from far away. So go ahead and move in here, get kunai on these guys. Didn't even have to backstab him. Go ahead and take him out. There's a lot of barrels in this section, so I thought it would be good to show how I navigate that. You just need to be aware and be trying to take them out before you get close to them. Which, if you watch much of my gameplay, I'm always on barrel patrol because they're just so dangerous on OP10. Take that one out. And I'm trying to get these guys closer together in anticipation of my Many Must Fall chains. And then this guy was not able to get the backstab, but was still able to take him out. So you don't always have to backstab. You know, I'm just saying to give yourself the best possible chance of getting the most amount of chains. That's what you want to do. Especially, you know, if you're not using Gibbed. If you're using the Hide of Terramorphous, a perfect one from Gibbed, it has over 7 million Roid damage. So it's just such a powerhouse. It can get away oftentimes without having to backstab or slag or deathmark. Unfortunately, that scavenger I didn't have slagged or anything, so I didn't do much damage to him. Scavengers are really tanky anyway, though. Oh, and again, you can go for melee crits. They do deal a flat double damage, so they're worth going for when you can. Certainly not, you know, a required part of the playstyle or anything, though. And this is just such a fun playstyle. Like I said, it has a high learning curve, so you will struggle quite a bit at first. I'm making it look kind of easy because I have played this build a lot. Like I've said, this is my favorite build. But it does have a high learning curve. So it'll take you a bit. Oh, see, I just killed myself on my kunai because it got caught on the terrain there. So be careful of that. But again, you can see @1 with the gun, with the Pimpernels, we were able to get back up and fight for your life very easily. And then I use execute to close distance to get up on this platform. And I'm trying to take these guys out while I wait for my Roid shield bonus to activate. And then again, we're just swinging to keep our health up before Deception comes back, and then I can take these guys out easily. Oh, he actually died before I could execute him. Boom, Pimpernel killing guys so easy. Again, the problem with the Hide of Terra, obviously it is the highest damage Roid Shield in the game, but it only drops from Terramorphous at, I believe, a 2.86% rate. So you can see multiple chains here, and I'm just trying to show more of both playstyles here. This is melee and the sniping aspects coming together, how I typically play the build. But yeah, the Hide of Terra, it only drops at like a 2.86% rate, and even if you do get one, it's not guaranteed to be a good one. I farmed Terramorphous like over 200 times because I was going for either a Hide of Terramorphous or a Teeth of Terramorphous. That's one of my favorite shotguns. I'm going to make a video on it soon. But yeah, I think I killed him about 200 times, and I only got two Teeth of Terramorphous drops, and I got 6 hides, but all of the hides were terrible. The best one I got only had like 4 million roid damage. And the best, the first Teeth of Terramorphous I got had a Hyperion grip and a bayonet, which is like the worst possible roll. The second one I got had a bandit grip and no accessory, but it's still very good, and I do look forward to covering that weapon. There are a lot of kind of slept on weapons that you don't see get much love that are surprisingly effective. Zer0 is good with basically all shotguns, but the Teeth of Terramorphous also benefits from grenade damage bonuses, so I like using it on Axton too. It's one of those weapons that really benefits from Two-Fang, so Zer0 can make really good use of it. And then you can see, I take this guy out and I end up falling down, so I cut the footage to catch back up here. And again, we're just sniping guys from far away when we need to, and then whenever we get damaged, we just pull back and throw our Chain Lightning to get our health back up. Throw Deception to close distance here, and a lot of enemies spawn here, so I go ahead and switch over to the Sniper, Heart of the Ancients. And again, I just wanted to kind of show a different mix of everything, because I anticipated that I would be down here, so I wanted to get those bonuses from the Heart of the Ancients. So a bunch of enemies do spawn here, scavengers and stuff, and it's easy to get into a bad position where you're getting downed over and over. But that is why we have the Heart of the Ancients. It is not, going to replace the bone, but it is also good to have, just to have it in your inventory for when you do need it. So go ahead and finish taking these guys out and head on up to Captain Flynt. He's a pretty tough boss. If you're not prepared for him, if you know how to take him out, he's not too bad. He does have a lot of mobs, and the fire immunity phase can kind of mess you up. I think I take my first death. Might be the only death of the run that I take to him. No, I think I die one other time. But I'm just waiting for him to come down here. I'm trying to close distance and get to him while I take out his mobs here. And then unfortunately he does go into his invincibility phase, which Gearbox has such a fetish for. I don't even know what I was thinking. I don't know why I tried to attack him, but obviously I get downed, and then I do believe I die here. I fight for it, but I'm not able to get the second wind. But that's okay, not a big deal. Death has like no consequences in this game. That's part of the reason the exaggerated difficulty of this game has always been insane to me, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm slagging this guy, and then I just get my kunai on him, use execute to close distance, get my health back with my kunai, backstab, and he's dead. And then it's on to Digistuct Peak. And here was my first run. You gotta be really careful with this build. I made it almost all the way to the end, and I was taking out a turret. I got complacent and allowed the enemies to spawn before I was back safely in cover. Get downed, and I have no way to second wind. The enemies are not close enough to me, or at least not ones that I can realistically kill. So I made it this far and ended up dying, which kind of sucks. That's really the only time that death has consequences, is whenever you're, far into a raid and you die and you have to start all the way over. And then here, I went ahead and took that guy out, and then I got the backstab on him and took him about halfway out. And then you can just circle strafe enemies like this and just keep hitting them to keep your health up while you wait for your deception to come back. Get him into killing blow range, and then I did get my deception back, so I went ahead and finished him off. didn't even need the backstab. Surveyors can be very, very annoying. You can use the B-Shield to take them out easily. If you can hit them right with the Pimpernel, they'll die pretty quickly too. You can also melee them. Melee attacks extend upwards into the air. I don't know how far. It goes really, really far. I don't know if there's a theoretical limit, but you can usually still melee any airborne enemy. Digistuct Peak is, for the most part, a lot of fun. It is pretty tough. There's some annoying parts. Like, Gearbox is just, they're just so bad for making really cool content, but then blemishing it with annoying shit like having a ton of Surveyor spawns, or Dukino's mom, or the double Saturns. It's just like in their DNA, man. I don't know. But, you know, I do still overall like it a lot. These guys are hard to crit a little bit, so I'm waiting for my Deception to come back so I can take them out with an Execute. And we're able to do so. But yeah, obviously you can use the B-Shield to take out stuff like Surveyors or problematic enemies. I didn't want to rely on the B-Shield too much, I just wanted to show that it's another option. Obviously stuff like the Interfacer and the Norfleet, those are great options, so see, I took that one out with the melee attack. But I didn't want to use the Interfacer or the Norfleet because, again, I wanted this build to be more accessible and to not, you know, rely on hard to get gear like that. That Spider Ant I was able to sweet spot pretty well. Once you get the hang of sweet spotting enemies with the Pimpernel, you'll be able to take them out very quickly. It does have a bit of a learning curve though. You know, all of the weapons that have like unique projectile patterns and unique spread patterns, I think that's a very cool thing about the game because it really diversifies the gameplay. Then I'm desperate to take this guy out before he takes off. Especially super badass Surveyors, if they're flying around in the air, they're really annoying to deal with. But you know, the Pimpernel, obviously to get crits with it, you have to aim kind of below the crit spot and make the balloon pattern explode on the crit spot. So that's a very interesting thing there. So taking these guys out with the Pimpernels at long range, using this little rock cover to protect myself while I take these guys out. Pimpernel is really good for stripping shields, so you don't really have to run a dedicated shock weapon. And at times, you know, it can just outright kill enemies, even the Slag Pimpernel. So I got my health, I was below health gate here, so I was kind of worried I was going to go down. But I was able to recover my health with the Chain Lightning and the Kunai. And then I'm closing distance with Execute, so that I can get behind this guy and almost take him out in one shot. But we have to finish him off with the Rubi. And then I get a single melee attack off on that guy before I get downed. But fortunately, he stops right here, and I'm able to take him out with a Pimpernel. If you kind of aim at the bottom part of the loader, or of the Surveyors, then the Pimpernel Bloom will deal more damage to them. That's, you know, why you don't want to spec into Velocity, because although it is a good skill, it does unfortunately synergize poorly with certain weapons like the Pimpernel. Another super badass Surveyor. Like I said, they are super, super annoying, so anytime you can take them out quickly, you want to go ahead and do that. I got so many of them on my original, the first time I did this guide on my first channel. They're not too bad if you can get them to come at you in a straight line, but you can't always do that. And I did expect to have this video out a lot sooner. I've been working hard on some other content that I hope you guys will appreciate. It should be out before too long, but I've been investing a ton of time in it. Got a sneaky Execute on that Surveyor there. And then again, just throw a Chain Lightning. We're able to get our health back up. But yeah, I've been investing a lot of time in... I'm going to be doing a video showcasing how to solo all raids with Zer0. So the annoying Surveyors finally take them out. And then I get the bad spawn with the Scorches here, where they spawn with a ton of Surveyors. You can bore them. You can bunch them up with a Singularity Grenade like this, and then if you get lucky, you can bore them pretty well. Unfortunately, I was not having said luck in this run, and there are Surveyors everywhere. You want to be really careful with them because they can heal Scorch insanely quickly. So ideally you just want to take them out before you even start damaging the Scorches. So I think that is what I decided to do. So you can see the bee obviously is going to take them out really quickly. But you do still have to be careful because there's like 7 enemies trying to attack you at this point. And when everything goes smoothly, you can take these Scorches out really quickly. Especially again with a perfect Hide of Terra. But if you can just get either a good bore action on them, they'll die really quickly. Or if you can have them slagged, have them death marked, and you can hit their crit spots, you can take them out surprisingly quickly. I was not having any luck on this run. I can usually kill them more quickly, but that's just how it goes sometimes, right? And those flames are super, super dangerous. That's why I was being so cautious. I mentioned the health gate mechanic before, how you can usually not be killed above, or yeah, when you're above 50% health. Those little flame puddles are one of the few things that can kill you through health gate. So they're super dangerous because of that. And a lot of times you'll be about to go in for an execute and there'll be some flames on the ground and you won't be able to take them out. So you can see I took out the first Scorch with an execute there. This one I don't think I had him slagged and I might have missed the crit spot there. You can also circle strafe him once you get it down to one of them left. Just circle strafe and attack like I am right here. And you can take them out pretty quickly. But you do have to be cautious of those flames. And Dukino's mom, super, super annoying. If you get the bad spawn, which is when she spawns by herself and there's no minions, if you go down, it's game over. So fortunately, I did have the minion spawn, so I was able to get back up here. Her shock balls are super, super dangerous. I think if you have a shock immunity, that could help here. If you have a shield with a shock immunity, I did not. The Transformer might be a good choice here. And I just decided to take her out with the Pimpernel and the Bee Shield. You can take her out with pure melee, but it's a lot riskier, especially if you don't have a perfect Hide of Terra. And you can see, even when she was in killing blow range, she took a long time to finish off. Me and Starkiller did a run where we beat the Peak with no red text gear, and she was like the only part we struggled with. She killed us a lot. She's literally harder than some raid bosses. She's definitely harder than both Pyro Pete and Hatterax. And then again, this is the Black Queen section. They can spawn immediately, or sometimes you'll have to deal with some extra mobs first. Just took out that Rapid Skag. Another thing Melee Zer0 can do is he can yeet a lot of enemies off the map. Like if you get to the edge of the arena, if you have an annoying enemy like a Rapid Skag, you can just yeet them into the abyss. I did that to quite a lot of problematic enemies during my OP10 with no slag, no red text gear, and no bar challenge run that I'm also currently editing. But yeah, this is going to be a really in-depth raiding guide for Zer0. I beat almost all of the raids legitimately. The only ones I haven't done yet are Hyperius and Veracitus, and I might just do them further down the road so I can just go ahead and get the video out. That shouldn't be too much longer. Like I said, I expected to have this melee guide out sooner, but I have had a lot of other stuff to work on. And then I was just waiting for this ion loader to lower his shield. He's taking his sweet time. Oh, I'm also going to show you guys how to kill Jackenstein in that raid guide, because he's a lot easier than people think. But anyway, I meant to switch to my Rubi right there, and I misinput and ended up getting downed, but that's okay. We're able to get back up with these. Unfortunately, I did allow the ion loader to get a second shield up, which is not ideal. I also forgot to bring some stuff with me. I forgot to bring an Unkempt Harold. I forgot to bring a Fastball. Some of that stuff would have been good options to have here, because there are certain enemies that it's hard to use the Pimpernel on because either they're too small or whatever. So for some of these enemies, it definitely would have been better to have those other pieces of gear with me. And now, if you can crit these guys, you can kill them quickly, but it's not always easy. And then when the Black Queen spawn, I would try to bore them. If they stay alive for very long, they can quickly spawn a ton of enemies, and it just becomes really annoying. So I just try to bore them, throw the Singularity Grenades, get them bunched together, get Slag and Kunai on them. And then the Pimpernel can do a lot of good work. So see, I took one of them out and almost killed the other, but she was able to spawn some minions, which is unfortunate, but it could have been a lot worse. And then these minions aren't too difficult to deal with, but you do want to be careful, especially if there's a lot of them. It probably would have been faster to take them out with melee. I don't know why I was just using the Pimpernel here, to be honest. I had been playing the game for a long time at this point, so I may have just been mentally fatigued and I was just trying to get it done. Then we'll switch on up to this next station, this next section, the Obliteration Station. As soon as these turrets come out, you need to take them out quickly. They can harass you and cause you a lot of problems, so don't underestimate them because they will down you when you're not paying attention. I think I was aiming a little bit too high. If I'd been aiming lower, I could have taken them out a little bit more quickly, I think. And these boneheads do have a chance to drop the Bone Shredder, which is one of the best SMGs in the game. It functions basically more like a shotgun, though. That's the effective range you would want to use it at. This little platform here is a good place to fight from, because if you get in trouble, you can just evade backwards and then loop back around. Almost took him out. If I had waited till the final 0.5 seconds, I probably would have finished him off. But yeah, this little platform, if you do get in trouble, like I said, you can just dip backwards off the platform to safety, so it's a good little hideout here. I've honestly had really bad luck farming gear from Digistuct Peak. I don't get drops very frequently here. And you've got chances at some decent stuff. The Bone Shredder's really good. The Infinity's pretty good on Zer0, although, you know, I'm not a huge fan of it. And then the Assassins, the Dog is good. I think I go ahead and take this Surveyor out. Yeah. Take this guy out. And then, see, I get almost killed here, and so I just loop back around to the entrance here. Throw my Chain Lightning to get back above Health Gate. And then sometimes you can get into a position like this where you can peek out at the Surveyors, and this is a good way to take them out without exposing yourself. Now I am getting kind of crowded by these enemies, so wait for my deception to come back so I can take them out. Unfortunately, I was not in a position to get a backstab on this Bonehead, so I have to retreat. But Slag Pimpernel, really great slag tool. Got Slag and Kuna on him. And I was able to get a backstab and take him out in one hit. He dropped a Bone Shredder, but it was non-elemental, which is very unfortunate. You know, overall, the loot system is good, but there are some bad nuances. Like on OP10, elemental gear should be more weighted because you almost always need to match elements. So I mean, if I were designing this game, I would have decided, okay, on Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, elemental drops are going to be weighted more than non-elemental, because you're almost never going to want a non-elemental drop over an elemental. And then there's also the fact that you can get slag drops on most weapons, which for the vast majority of weapons sucks. And then the fact that you play on OP10 and you can still get gear below OP10. There's just a lot of bad decisions there. I don't understand what Gearbox was thinking. I mean, I guess they're thinking, hey, you know, if you got 10% drop chance, that's not bad. You know, you'll have to beat an enemy about 9 or 10 times to get the drop, and hey, you're done. The problem is, you can get it below level, you can get it non-elemental, you can get it slag, you can get it with, you know, a Hyperion grip and a bayonet accessory, which are bad. So that's just kind of unfortunate. You know, there's some little tweaks that could have made this loot system a lot more enjoyable. I've always said I wish they would have just made the bosses harder, but make them guaranteed to drop their gear. I think beating one tough boss once would be more engaging than beating, you know, a really weak boss 10 times. That's just my personal feelings. That's why it's so frustrating that Terramorphous only has like a 2.86% drop chance for the Teeth of Terramorphous and the Hide of Terramorphous. He's one of the toughest raids in the game, in my opinion, and he has such a low drop chance. It's just not very good. I mean, he does drop the legendary class mods, which are iffy. They're fun to play around with, I guess, but they're far from the best class mods. And I just don't see why you have this really tough boss, but then you make his best gear only drop at a 2% rate, which is kind of crazy. Cheater, he's shooting me through the wall. But we almost take him out, then I need to run to cover because I'm really worried about dying. Like I said, at this point I had been playing for a long time and I did not want to have to start the peak over again. So we just throw our decoy away, get up close to these guys, and we can go ahead and take them out. And then I am not super good at this part. I need to practice it more. But, you know, if you're not, you can hide behind this pop over here. It can give you a little bit of cover. If you have a perfect Hide of Terra, it's not as necessary because you can more easily kill the assassins. But we only have about half the roid damage of a perfect Hide of Terra, so it's going to be harder for us to take them out, and we're going to need a little bit of safety. I probably would have been safe just running around in a loop. But like I said, I really did not want to have to restart this again. If you do use this pop for safety, be really careful when you throw your chain lightning because it can hit the pop and kill you. Get Wreath here down to killing blow range and we take him out. And then I didn't mean to do that glitch there. There's a glitch with the decoy where you can throw it into a wall and it will de-aggro the enemies. It's a very effective tool, but I don't really like making use of it. But there was no, I basically had no option. I couldn't throw it. The only direction that I could have thrown it without causing the glitch to happen was the direction I needed to move in. Which obviously you don't want to do that. You can't throw your decoy in the direction you're about to go because then you'll just run into enemy fire. So that was a bit unfortunate. You know, maybe I can practice and try to get a cleaner run where I don't have to use the pop. And maybe I can upload that separately down the road. But there's a lot of other content I would rather prioritize making first, so that's going to be a while. And I take Wad out pretty easily, so I may have been okay to just run around in a circle and try to avoid them. Oh, those fighter tanks are really easy to take out with Boar, by the way. And then, like most of the raids I like, I'm gonna give my thoughts on them more during that that raid guide. But there are some decisions that just are really frustrating. Like Digistuct Peak is a lot of fun, but then they shove 2 Saturns in there. Enemies who have a massive health pool and who can't be slagged. They don't have crit spots. They're just not engaging to fight. So I just don't understand a decision like that. It just feels actively malicious against the player. But fortunately, I'm able to take a lot of the surveyors out pretty easily here. And take these guys out, and we're very close to dealing with the Saturns. So I get 3 mini must fall chains here. I could have got 4, but unfortunately that guy did not get slagged, so he did survive momentarily. And then here the Saturn spawn, so I'll go ahead and switch to the B shield. I'm not particularly good at boring them, so I'm going to speed up the footage here. I need to practice it and look up some other runs of other people doing it. I know that you want to bore them where their turrets are, and that you want to try to line them up. But this was one of my worst runs with them. Usually I can take them out a lot more quickly, even though I'm not great at it. But I was just having terrible luck during this run. The terrain here is also kind of glitchy. Gearbox loves their glitchy terrain, so it was kind of hard to walk around. And again, I was being really, really careful because I did not want to die and then have to do this again. And then this constructor is really dangerous, so you need to take him out as quickly as possible. So that's what I'm doing here. And then we'll go ahead and switch back over to our Love Thumper. And if you didn't know, Corrosive is basically the best damage type to use on the peak because the flesh enemies are not considered true flesh enemies, so they don't take extra damage from fire. I don't even think they take extra damage from Corrosive. I think it's just the fact that there's a lot of robotic enemies. So then overall, corrosion is the best element to use on the peak. And then again, I'm trying to stay in cover and snipe these guys. My shield is up for right now, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on. And then we get a badass surveyor spawn. and he hits me with a shock dot, but I'm able to get my health back up with the chain lightning. And then at this point, I'm like, fuck it, and I just switch back over to the B shield. Like I said, I didn't want to use it too much, but the surveyors are just so annoying. I did not want to deal with them. And again, a Norfleet is really good for dealing with them. The Topneaa is pretty good for dealing with them too. I think I forgot to bring it with me. Some people like to use the PBFG. I'm also going to show you guys how to do the peak skip after I finish this run, so stay tuned for that. Wait till the final 0.5 seconds and we take that Sergeant Loader out. And I think there's only a couple enemies left here, and then we can move on to the final area before the binary boss. The binary boss is very easy with Zer0, but obviously you want to be really careful because you don't want to make it that far and then die. The first time I did this video, that's what happened. I made it to the binary boss, and we actually ended up killing each other at the same time. And I didn't want to consider that a win, so I had to redo the whole thing. Was not really able to sweet spot this guy very effectively. But, you know, we'll just take him out with melee. And then he dodged my attack, but I was able to take him out eventually. And then this is the final area before the binary boss. These spider ants, they have a ground smash attack that's really dangerous if you get too close to them. And see, they bunched up, so I saw this as a good opportunity to bore them, and I was able to take some of them out. So see right there, I wanted to go in for a melee attack, but I was worried about him doing that ground smash attack. Again, the Unkempt Harold would have been a good option here too. But like I said, I did forget to bring it with me. I'm also anticipating more enemies spawning, which is why I was kind of hesitant to use my deception, but then I had to anyway. Did a good bit of damage, and then I wanted to retreat because I don't want to get stuck against this enemy when he does that attack. Because again, the last thing you want is to make it this far and then have to start all the way over. And again, I was in a perfect spot to do an execute and finish him off, but he did that ground smash attack. These little guys, they're easy to take out, but you do have to be careful because of that fire damage. And then we get one final spawn here before the binary boss. I could have gone out there and killed them with an execute, but where there were so many enemies there, I really didn't want to risk getting surrounded and getting taken out, especially not by that badass surveyor. And that was a really good opportunity to attack him, but again, I just felt like it was too dangerous to move in at that point. And then right here, that could have been bad. I forgot to switch back to my chain lightning, so I'm very lucky that I didn't go down there. If you do switch over to a grenade to, you know, either a Fastball or a Singularity Grenade, make sure you remember to switch back to your chain lightning, because the last thing you want is to go down just because you forgot to re-equip your chain lightning. But we're able to take that guy out, and then we just have to deal with this surveyor. I get Kunai on him, and then I go ahead and switch over to the B shield to take him out more easily. The main thing is they're really annoying because they'll often just fly around like this. They're not so bad when they come at you in a straight line, but sometimes they just won't do that, which is really frustrating.
Nearly finished with the course. In keeping with laws of drama, however, I have saved the most difficult task for last.
So that was a fucking lie.
And yeah, you can see how easy the binary boss is to take out. No problem at all. Especially not for Zer0 anyway, because he does have Bore. And yeah, I'll go ahead and show you guys how to do the Digistuct Peak skip. You can do, oh, well first I'll show you. You can kill these bar tanks really easily. Bore just destroys them. And then here's a cleaner run with the Scorches. You can take them, again, if you get lucky, you can bore them really easily, and you can take them out very quickly with melee.
Striking from nowhere, killing with accuracy. This is who I am.
And finally, I will cover the Digistuct Peak skip. What you will want for this is a low-level Bewm, a Grog Nozzle, and then just another pistol to switch on and off from the Grog Nozzle. Probably the Harold would work fine. And notice how I try to line the jump up here. You see this line? I'm trying to show you the angle that I use. So you just keep swapping to your Grog Nozzle until you get the drunk effect. Then you swap to your low level Bewm and throw a grenade and drunk rocket grenade jump. It takes a little bit to learn how to do this. It took me about an hour to figure out how to do it, but now I can do it with basically 100% success rate. And then again, you can just kill the binary boss really easily with Boar. You just want to aim at his joint there with the Herald, and he'll die very, very quickly. Now, all characters can do this. I'm not sure about Krieg. I think it's harder for him, but I want to say I heard Jolt's dude say it's still possible. I'm not 100% sure. But Zer0 can do it more easily because of Two Fang. He can boost it to almost 100% with the Shadow of the Seraphs, which is the relic that gives you the double shot chance. So yeah, you just want a Grog Nozzle, a Herald, a low-level Bewm, and the Shadow of the Seraphs for the double shot chance. And like I said, all characters except for Creed can do this. Zer0 can just do it more easily because of Two Fang and because of Boar. And you can get a ton of pearls from doing this. He drops a lot of iridium, he drops a lot of good purples, a lot of good relics. And you can basically do this all day. Like I said, I can do this with almost 100% success rate now. And like I said, try to pay attention to my placement. And sometimes you will get harassed by enemies, so you can just throw your decoy into the wall. Then get your drunk effect, and grenade, rocket jump up here. Sometimes if you don't make it all the way, you can do an extra shot to get over the gap. And just try to position yourself exactly how I am. I'm playing with max FOV and at 4K resolution, so you might need to know that to line this up better. And we just keep switching until we get our drunk effect. Sometimes it takes a little bit. And sometimes if you don't make it all the way, you'll land on a little ledge down here. And if you land there, you can actually do the same thing. You can drunk, rocket, grenade jump, and get back up there. And see, this is so good. I landed all the way on top of the tower here. And you can do this starting at, I believe, OP4. Although the binary boss won't spawn until OP5, I believe. But I do hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. And I do hope to see you next time. Have a good day, guys. Okay, guys, actually, before I go, I figured I would give my advice on how to level Melee Zer0 up. Now, I'll be honest, I am not very experienced with that. And I think it'll be kind of tricky to do a pure melee playstyle just leveling up. You're going to need access to kind of hard to farm gear, like you'll constantly have to replace your Roid shield, you'll constantly have to replace your Tesla grenades for stripping your shield. But you know, I'll give my advice for what I would do if I were leveling this up. First, I would take Killing Blow, it's just a really good bonus. Then I would take Be Like Water. You're still shooting a lot, so you'll be proccing that melee damage bonus a lot. It's going to be better with like snipers and pistols. Unfortunately for shotguns or multi-pellet weapons, the bonus damage only applies to one pellet. So that is unfortunate, but because of that, it's best with snipers and pistols. Then of course I would take Execute for the massive damage and gap closing ability. Then I take Backstab for the big multiplicative damage bonus. Then I would take Follow Through for the movement speed and melee damage bonus. It is additive, but it is still, you know, a pretty decent bonus. Oh, and by the way, I'll cover gear recommendations after the skills. Then again, at this point, you have the conundrum of, would you rather have a little bit of not very much damage or a little bit extra healing? I would probably just go ahead and take Resurgence, especially if you don't have a Moxie weapon. That healing could come in handy. Then obviously Many Must Fall. And then over here, both of these skills are really good, but first I would take Fast Hands because you do reload and weapon swap all the time. Then I do Ambush, again, a big multiplicative damage bonus that is always active coming out of Deception. Obviously, then you're going to take Deathmark. Then at this point, I would probably take Counter-Strike for the big melee damage bonus. You can make an argument for either Rising Shot or Innervate. If you're using the Love Thumper, I would probably take Fearless, but it's going to depend. If you're not using the Love Thumper, I'd probably go ahead and spec into Innervate for the extra healing, movement speed, and gun damage. And then at this point, I'd probably go ahead and take Rising Shot. Melee stacks of Rising Shot are additive damage, I believe, but the gun damage stacks are multiplicative. But it's still a pretty good skill. And then at this point, I would go ahead and take Death Blossom. And now with Grim, you may not always be using a Roid Shield because of the way leveling up works. You may not always have access to one. If you're not using a Roid Shield, there's no reason to not take Grim. Then we're obviously going to still want to take Boar because it's just so good. So I'd go ahead and take Headshot and Killer. then at this point you have 12 points left over. Now, if you're not going for the build that I showcased here that relies on the Pimpernels, you're not going to need to get to at 1 with the gun, so you can use these points over here. So first I would finish off Rising Shot. Now again, if at this point you're using a Love Thumper, I'd go ahead and take Fearless. You could go ahead and take 2 Fang as well. I wouldn't take Unforeseen because again, it's going to kill the targets that you could chain Many Must Fall off of. I would finish off Resurgence. Again, if you're using a Moxie weapon, you could move these points into Lack the Wind. Either one of those will be, you know, a small bonus. If you don't have a Moxie weapon, getting the healing from Resurgence and Innervate might help you. But now the gear is going to be really tricky because, again, as you're leveling up, you're constantly outgrowing your gear. So it's going to be kind of tricky. I did look at some other guides, and I will link one in the description from a guy called Altair that's really in depth. But, you know, generally you'll want to look out for non-unique void shields, and then as you level up and you gain access to the quests, you'll have access to the Order, to the Love Thumper. Obviously, once you get access to the Law, you can use it in combination with the Order to get healing. Obviously, Moxie weapons with blades will be really good because you'll be able to gain access to extra melee damage and extra healing that way. One of the guides I looked at, it recommended a bladed Lascaux, and then obviously a lot of the bladed Moxie weapons, the Heartbreaker, the Hell, all that stuff is good. Now, the thing is, I believe the earliest the DLCs will scale to is level 15. So for example, if you wanted to, just as soon as you hit level 15, you could go into the Captain Scarlet DLC and get the Rapier. Now, the good thing about that is a low-level Rapier will work all the way through, you know, the end of the game because you just need that bonus melee damage. So you can decide if you would rather do that and then have that bonus damage. That's probably what I would recommend. You can also get a Pimpernel, and I would recommend actually getting a Slag version because as Slag weapons level up, they don't lose their Slag utility. So if you go in at level 15 and you get a Rapier and a Slag Pimpernel, you're going to have both of those basically until the end of the game, right? And then obviously as you're leveling up, you'll gain access to the Rubi, and the same thing is true for it. If you can get a Slag version with a blade, it won't really be a problem that you're out leveling it because you'll still be able to use it, right? Now again, it is going to be kind of tricky, and I would recommend you're going to be needing to rely on gun gameplay quite a bit as well, but you could do it. You know, normal mode is so easy, I'm sure it won't be much of a problem. The biggest problem I think is going to be stripping your shield if you're still trying to do that at a low level. It may at times be unnecessary, but I'm sure for like some bosses that's what you would want to do. Finding that gear is going to be kind of problematic. Constantly finding Teslas that are appropriately scaled to strip your shield is going to be kind of annoying. But those are some unique recommendations. The guide that I read also recommended getting a Teapot and a Corrosive Lady Fist when you gain access to those because they'll be good for the bots that follow. For non-uniques, you know, you're going to want your Proficiency Relic. That's still really good for Zer0. The Melee Relic is not very good because of how the math works out. The Ninja Comms are really good, the ones that boost Backstab and Killing Blow, especially while you're leveling up, so keep an eye out for those. Unfortunately, that's really as far as my expertise goes with this, with leveling up a Melee Zer0. But those would be my suggestions. And like I said, I will link to that guy's guide if you want a more in-depth look at it. And maybe at some point I could start, you know, a full playthrough, just start from level 1 and do a Melee Zer0 playthrough up to max level. I wouldn't mind doing something like that, but that would be a big time sink. So I'm not sure if I'll do that or not. But like I said, I do hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything I forgot to cover, I'll try to respond in the comments and see if I can help you out. But I do hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I do hope to see you next time. Have a good day, guys.
Final round.
Hear my skills.
Double kill.
Never die.
Triple kill. Overkill. Kill-tacular. Kill-trocity. Kill-and-jar. Kill-catastrophe.